Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salamun alaikum, brother and sister. Inshallah, tonight we have a program by reciting Quran, Dua Iftitah, and inshallah we have a lecture by Maulana Shabber Kirmani. Inshallah. We are going to start the program by reciting Quran. I'm going to check. Oops, brother Yasser is not available. Salamun alaikum, brother Abu Abdullah. Brother Abu Abdullah, I cannot hear your voice, brother. Brother Abu Abdullah. Brother, we cannot hear your voice. Okay, I have to start the program by reciting Quran, and inshallah, computer is going to recite the Quran. Brother Abu Abdullah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
خرج منها خائفا يترقب قال رب نجني من القوم الظالمين ولما توجه تلقاء مدين قال عسى ربي أن يهديني سواء السبيل ولما ورد ماء مدين وجد عليه أمة من الناس يسقون ووجد من دونهم امرأتين تذودان قال ما خطبكما قالتا لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير فسقى لهما ثم تولى إلى الظل فقال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير فجاءته إحداهما تمشي على استحياء قالت إن أبي يدعوك ليجزيك أجر ما سقيت لنا فلما جاءه وقص عليه القصص قال لا تخف نجوت من القوم الظالمين قالت إحداهما يا أبت استأجر إن خير من استأجرت القوي الأمين قال إني أريد أن أنكحك إحدى ابنتي هاتين على أن تأجرني 8 حجج فإن أتممت 10 فمن عندك وما أريد أن أشق عليك ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصالحين قال ذلك بيني وبينك أيما الأجلين قضيت فلا عدوان علي والله على ما نقول وكيل. لما قضى موسى الأجل وسار بأهله آنس من جانب الطور نارا قال لأهلهم كثوا إني آنست نارا لعلي آتيكم منها بخبر أو جذوة من النار لعلكم تصطلون. فلما أتاها نودي من شاطئ الوادي الأيمن في البقعة المباركة من الشجرة أي يا موسى إني أنا الله رب العالمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. السلام عليكم برادر أبو عبد الله.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, I'm very glad to hear your voice, brother.
Yes, brother Sahid.
Okay, brother. تقبل الله أعمالكم, and inshallah we are going to recite دعاء افتتاح. بسم الله, brother.
إن شاء الله. إن شاء الله. يا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه، ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه، ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير، مع حاجة بي إليه عظيمة، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي، عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي. أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، وأريتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا، وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك، فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي، لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور، فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك، فارحم عبدك الجاهل، وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك، مجري الفلك، مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى، تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله، ولا شبيه يشاكله، ولا ظهير يعاضده. قهر بعزته الأعزاء، وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه، ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازيه. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني، فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه، ولا يغلق بابه، ولا يرد سائله، ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين، ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين، ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. الحمد لله، والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين، مبير الظالمين، مدرك الهاربين، نكال الظالمين، صريخ المستصرخين، موضع حاجات الطالبين، معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها، وترجف الأرض وعمارها، وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين. وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
اللهم اجعله الداعية إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه واعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملنا، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، واعزز به ذلتنا، واغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، واعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، واعطنا به فوق رغبتنا. يا خير المسؤولين، يا خير المسؤولين، يا خير المسؤولين، وأوسع المعطين، اشف به صدورنا، واذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق. آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا، فصل على محمد وآله وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل
اللهم صل
على
على
محمد
محمد
وآل
وآل
محمد.
محمد وعجل فرجهم. أحسن. طيب الله برادر أبو عبد الله
أحسن
for
الله
reciting
إليكم أجمعين،
nicely دعاء افتتاح. ما شاء الله برادر. جزاكم الله خيرا.
وجزاكم خير، جزاكم خير منه.
السلام عليكم مولانا شبير كرماني. السلام
عليكم
عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
How are you
عليكم السلام
مولانا؟
ورحمة الله. Your du'as, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
قبل الله
Alhamdulillah.
أعمالكم طاعات عبادات
جميعا.
إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله جميعا. إن شاء الله. إن شاء الله.
Yes مولانا, we are ready for listen your lecture. بسم الله مولانا.
إن شاء الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فوضوا أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين عذب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، ياسين والقرآن الحكيم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman in Milwaukee or wherever you are hearing my voice, salamun alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salamun alaykum.
Question: what world do we live in? Keep this question in the back of your mind, inshallah, we will return to it. I want you to imagine a scenario, and the scenario is the following, and this is a true scenario. There's a moment in time you're growing up and you're raising your child and giving them the best education. And as you're giving them the best education, in Milwaukee, for example, the time and the era comes that your child goes through elementary school, then middle school, then, for example, onto college. Or if you're someone who's going through this yourself, imagine these stages. And then there comes a moment in time where it comes time for you to go to university. It comes time for you to go on to higher education. And you apply to different institutes and different institutions, either Harvard or Princeton on the East Coast, or, for example, on the West Coast, you apply to Stanford as well as UC Berkeley and many other institutions that are of the top caliber. And as time progresses, you become a very diligent student, and then you get admissions into these top caliber universities, either Stanford or Berkeley, Harvard or Princeton, coast to coast, the best institutions. You make the decision to go to Stanford. When you go to Stanford, you decide to major in computer science or engineering, your choice. And when you pick this major, you do very well in it and you excel in it. And as time progresses, then you graduate. When you graduate, you then move on and get another degree. Let's say you go for your MBA. Then you get this degree. And on top of that, then you get into Silicon Valley and you begin to work in the technology sector. And as you begin to work in this technology sector, you begin to become very good at it. And as you begin to become very good at it, you decide that I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to start my own startup. And as you come to this realization that you will start your own startup and your own company, you then become very good at that. You've had the top education, you have a sharp mind, and you've done very well. And as time has progressed, your company goes public, you make a lot of money, you've done very well for yourself. Or is that a success? Keep that question in the back of your mind at one level, number one. What I want to discuss with you, and we'll come back to this in a moment, is building on what we spoke on last Thursday. I want to give a conclusion tonight, inshallah, in our lecture today. We mentioned last time that when in a study of 50 of the community leaders in the Shia community, the biggest question that they were concerned with was the future of our generations. That is, why are youth not participating today? And if youth are not participating today, that means there's going to be a challenge in the future. For if you've been to Turkey, for example, and many of you may have been, I've been to Turkey, many of you have also been there perhaps. When you go to the masajid in Turkey, sometimes they have a writing that's written on the walls there. The tour guide will tell you, what does this say? When you ask him, what does this sign say? He will tell you it says that if you do not hear the saying in Turkish, if you the saying in the mosques in Turkey is that if you do not hear crying in the back of your mosque, if you do not hear crying in the back of your masjid, then be very concerned about the future of your community. Why? The reason is because there are no youth there. There's no children there who will grow up in the mosque and attend the mosque. When Rasulullah was there, when Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein were there, he did things that the Arabs before would not do. For example, what? He would take Imam Hassan and Hussein and he would kiss them. It was not seen for a man to show affection to their children. Rasulullah changed the paradigm. When it was time for salah, imagine this for a moment. You are praying and your child comes to you while they're a child, while you are praying. Some people, they push the child away. What will the relationship of that child be with salah if you do this? First of all, many times we have a challenge getting our children to pray. Many times the fault is ours because the relationship that we gave them with salah was, when I'm praying, get away from me, don't come near me. Rasulullah, when Imam Hassan or Imam Hussein would come, he would show them affection to the extent that Jibreel had told Rasulullah to extend your sajda when Imam Hussein was in his sujood. So Rasulullah extended his sujood. Example on top of that, Imam Hassan, and there's numerous examples. The point that I'm getting at, how do we solve this problem that the biggest leaders in our community have on their mind, which is, how do we get the next generation to be observant of Islam and become better Muslims? This is the issue that we're trying to solve. Now, as we get going in our conversation, there's a few things that I need to mention to you. Today's conversation will be a little bit more philosophical. It will be a little bit more focused on economics, philosophy, and many other things that gave rise to our society. I apologize in advance, but in a community, in a society like Milwaukee that I've been to, I know you can handle this intellectual rigor because this is an intelligent community. You have University of Wisconsin-Madison, you have Marquette and many other institutions, and I've met the Mu'mineen there. Many of you are brilliant. And so this conversation needs to be had, but I will invite you to try to focus on this because it's very technical at some points and philosophical. But once you understand this, you will understand the world in which we operate. Once you understand the world in which you operate, you will then begin to understand the solutions to the problem. Now, I return to the scenario that I asked in the beginning. You get accepted to the top universities. You get accepted to them. You go to them. You graduate. You start a business. You become very successful. And you make tons of money. Are you successful? Is that success by itself? You need to know some philosophy here and some sociology. For example, who built our modern world? Alexis de Tocqueville. Alexis de Tocqueville was a French historian and sociologist. Now, this is a name that you need to know for tonight's conversation. And I will explain to you, what did he notice when he came to America 200 years ago? What did he notice about American society? And what do we notice about American society? What do we notice about the history of Europe and how that impacts our modern world today? Because the biggest issue that we need to understand, if we want to solve the problem of the youth attending mosque, is to understand the world in which they live in. And that it will not happen until we understand modernity in the modern age. So our discussion tonight is looking at three levels. The first level is going to the Quran and Surah Yasin to get guidance of what Allah is telling us about the world that we live in and what guidance we get from the Quran, number one. Number two, I want to then share with you the philosophy, the economics, and the understanding of the social scientists so that we can get an answer to our modern world's problem that I outlined at the beginning. Then number three, I want to look at the example of the Ahlul Bayt and what guidance did they give us 1400 years ago until the time of 1100 years ago, of the time of our 12th Imam. All the Imams, what guidance did they give us? so that we can apply it to solve the problem of the modern world, so that we don't have the issue finally of our youth not attending and having our mosques become empty. And inshallah, they will not be empty if we take the initiative. This is our agenda for the brief moments that we have together, inshallah. Wherever you are in Milwaukee or across the globe, wherever you're hearing my voice, from the bottom of your heart, send a salawat on Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
As I mentioned last time at the first level, we said that everything has a spring season, and the spring season of the Quran is Shahr Ramadan, according to Rasulullah. Therefore, we have to study the Quran. In the Quran, the heart of the Quran is Surah Yasin, chapter 36 of the Quran. And in that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا أَصْحَابَ الْقَرْيَةِ. We give unto them the example of the town, is جَاءَهَا الْمُرْسَلُونَ, that we sent unto them the messengers. Now, we said last time there's theories that this is Antioch or another city, but even in the fact that Allah said, give them, who? Ya Rasulullah, the Meccans, give them the example of the town. Allah did not take the name of the town. That means that this is the principle that Allah is laying out. Allah could have taken the name of the town, but Allah said, look, the town is not, the name of the town is not as important. What's the most important thing is the principle that I'm telling you in Surah Yasin. And what happened? Allah sent one messenger. No. He sent two messengers. No. He sent three messengers. He sent the third messenger, and still the people, did they listen or not? So there are messengers who come. Do people listen to them or not? Rasulullah was telling the Meccans also, you're not the first community that's been given a messenger. And you're not the first community that's rejected a messenger. There's other communities that have come before, and see what has happened to them. So at that point in time, we were told, John and Jonah, go. When John and Jonah go, at that point in time, they meet Habib al-Najjar, who is the Mu'min of Ali Yasin. We said the three Siddiqs, according to Rasulullah, are the example of Habib al-Najjar, of course, the Mu'min of Ali Fir'aun, his skill, and Amir al-Mu'minin, huwa Siddiq al-Akbar. And Amir al-Mu'minin was the biggest of them, the biggest honest Siddiq. Habib al-Najjar says, show me some sign at that point in time. They cure his son who was ill for a long time. Habib bin Najjar believes. So then they start doing tabligh, John and Jonah. When they began to do tabligh in this town, very few people brought Iman. The king and the ruler began to hear the news that these people are doing this. He said, what's going on here? They said, oh, these two people are doing tabligh here. They're inviting people to Islam or to the religion. Of course, the Tawheed, as we would call it, monotheism. At that point in time, and that is the God of Nabi Isa, which was the correct Islam or the correct religion at that time. Nonetheless, when this happened, as you know, the history of modern Christianity, particularly Catholicism, if you don't know this, because our world is built on Christianity, especially the part of the world we live in, and Europe as well, there was a compromise that happened. Istanbul's original name was Constantinople, after the Emperor Constantine. Constantine wanted to unite his entire empire under one religion. So what did he do? He told all of the Christian rulers, priests, to come into a room in a conference he called Council of Nicaea. He said, everyone come to the Council of Nicaea, and I want you to come to an agreement about one form of religion, of Christianity. So someone believed in one God, someone believed in Jesus being the Son of God, and they had different opinions. So he said, come to a conclusion. After 3-4 days, they said, we can come to no conclusion. He said, you must come to a conclusion because I want one form of Christianity that rules my entire dominion. This was very common. For example, for those who know the history of India, there was a time where there was a ruler by the name of Akbar. Akbar, the Mughal ruler, he wanted to unite his entire empire under one religion. So he told the scholars, come together, the Hindu scholars and the Muslim scholars, make a religion. So they took elements of Hinduism and Islam, and they created a religion called Din-e-Ilahi. And this was a religion that lasted in India almost 100 years, just under 100 years. But it was there. It didn't last beyond that. But the goal was to try to bring the entire empire under one religion. Constantine did the same thing. So Constantine said, oh, priests, make one form of Christianity. There was no consensus. So the result was the compromise that occurred. They said the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. Till this day, many Christians who are Catholics cannot prove analytically and logically why that is. It's just based on faith. The reason is because there was a compromise that was done. The current Bible that we have is not the original Bible. You have to go back to the red letter Bible that is the most accurate form or as close as possible to the original Bible to understand the Bible, number one. Number two, coming back to this, I mentioned this because Christianity at its original time was right, but then when Islam came, Islam superseded it. When Islam superseded it, John and Jonah were inviting the people. The king said, "What are you doing?" He said, "We are trying to bring people the word of God Almighty." At that point in time, the king put them in jail and he had them lashed and whipped. When he had them lashed and whipped and punished and put in jail, as time progressed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a third messenger, Simon or Shimon. When Allah sent the third messenger at that point in time, he was in taqayya, and we get the proof of the concept of taqayya from this example in Surah Yasin. That he came, he did not make it clear that he knew John and Jonah, and he did not make it clear that he was a believer. He was in taqayya. He became an advisor to the king. And when he became an advisor to the king began to trust him. As the king began to trust him and believe in him and listen to his advice, as time progressed, Hazrat Simon or Shimon, he said, I've heard that there's these two people who are in prison. What's the story about these two? He said, yes, they were people who were bringing people, they were misguiding people and telling them that there's one God and all of these idols are wrong. So I put them in jail. He said, what did they say? He said, oh, they said they have the ability to cure the sick and they have brought the word of God. He said, why don't we listen to them and just hear what they have to say? If they're right, maybe there's something to listen to. If they're wrong, then punish them, no problem. He said, very well. So he called on to them. At that point, when he called on to them, he said, what do you believe? He said, we believe that there is only one God, the creators of the heavens and the earth. So what's your proof? We have the ability to heal and bring those who are blind back their sight, and those who are deaf, we can give them their hearing back. Or those who are lepers, we can give them their shifa back, who have leprosy. He said, very well. Hazrat Shimon says, okay, this is what they claim. If they can do it, maybe we'll listen to them. If they don't, then we'll punish them. What's the big deal? He says, very well. So the narration, the riwayah says there's two riwayats here from the Ahlul Bayt. This is not detailed in the Quran, but the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt give us guidance on this. At that point in time, we're told that there's a moment in time that one element and one message that we learn from the prophets, a theme in the Quran, is that the messengers get people to think. If you look at Nabi Ibrahim's story in the Quran, Nabi Ibrahim says, he sees a kawkab, a star, and he says, Hada Rabbi. Ibrahim, how can you say that this star is your Rabb? How can you say the star is your Lord? He says, Hada Rabbi. So the people start looking at the star. But then the star begins to descend and the star begins to decline. And as the star begins to decline, he says, the star has disappeared. This cannot be my Lord. Why did he say Hada Rabbi? He was getting the people to think that, oh, this star, maybe this is God. Oh, it disappeared. That which disappears cannot be my God. So if this star can disappear and it's not God, how is these idols that you made with your own hands, how are they God? He's getting people to think. Same way, Hazrat Simon or Shimon, he's getting people to think, the king to think. What did he do? He said, oh, if they can do this, this is very good. Why not? So what does he do? There's two riwayat here. I'm trying to present both of them to you. Nonetheless, and very quickly too. I don't have all this time, much time. So what happens? He calls on the advice of Simon, he calls John and Jonah. And he says to them, what is your belief? At that point in time, when he says, what is your belief? They said, we believe in one God. And what's your proof? We can give sight to the blind and we can cure the leper. He says, I have the son. Habib bin Najjar also had a son. And according to some riwayat, the king also had a son. He said, I have this son. Can you cure this son? He's been ill for a long time. He's not able to see, for example. He says, very well. They cured the son. And at that point in time, according to the tradition, Simon says to the king, why do we not ask the gods, the idols that are here to also cure your son or cure anyone in town? When he said this, the king began to laugh. This is one riwayah. He said, these are idols we made with our own hands. How can they cure anyone? Simon said, really? So if that's what you believe, then we should follow what they're saying. Another riwayah says at that point in time that John and Jonah did not present themselves until later. What happened was the son was dead and came back to life. When the son was brought back to life by the dua of John and Jonah, the king asked him, who prayed for you that brought you back to life? So he had all of the prison inmates standing in line. And then the son went to one of them and said, this one is the one who prayed for me, John. Then he went further down the line and he saw Jonah. He said, this is the other one who prayed for me. Then the king said, this is correct. That's another riwayah. I wanted to share both with you. Nonetheless, at that point in time, the king said, oh, Simon, these idols that we made with our own hands, they cannot cure anyone. They cannot fix anyone. We just made them. So he said, Simon said, then we must follow what they say. So the riwayat say the king became a believer. Simon also became a believer, although he was already a believer. but he was in taqiyya before and he made it open. As this began, now here's the lesson for us. The qawm, the nation, the people, they began to do what? They began to say, oh, John and Jonah and Simon, these are bad luck. These are bad omens. This exact same thing happened in the time of Nabi Musa, the time of Nabi Ibrahim, the time of the people of Ad and Thamud. All of these people said, the messenger's bad luck. So, the Meccans, even in the time of Rasulullah, they used to look at the birds. When an earthquake or something comes, the birds are the first to know, they say. So they would say, if they saw a bird flying in a particular way, they would say it's a bad omen. So they said, oh, you're the problem, John, Jonah, Simon, because of you, all these issues are happening. We need to get rid of them. So they said what? We will stone them to death. So they took John and Jonah and Simon and they raised them and they tied them up and they were about to stone them. At that point in time, وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلًا يَسْعَى, the Quran says. From the farthest part of the city, the man came. Who was it? Habib al-Najjar. He said, oh people, do not stone them. Why? What's the dalil? They don't ask you for anything for themselves. They don't want anything from you. They are doing this for nothing. They don't want money from you. They don't want anything from you. Listen to them. They are speaking for your own good. وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا أَصْحَابَ الْقَرْيَةِ. Just tell them the example of this town. At that point in time, the narration says even Habib al-Najjar was stoned and they killed Habib al-Najjar. The story and the lesson that I want to give from the Quran, and this is a theme that happens throughout the lives of messengers, that they are sent and the people belie them. When the people belie them, what happens? Allah says, and in Surah Yasin, what did Allah do? One scream came, the entire town was destroyed. Now, in our world, in our society, we may not be destroyed in, this way. But what world and what society do we live in? We are told in the ziyarat, for example, what do you say? وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً ظَلَمَتْكَ وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً قَتَلَتْكَ وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً سَمِعَتْ بِذَلِكَ وَرَضِيَتْ بِهِ. What do we say in the ziyarat of Waritha, for example, on Thursday nights? We say, La'an, may Allah remove His mercy from the ones who killed you, Ya Abu Abdullah, and the ones who laid the groundwork for your killing, and the ones who are okay with you being killed. Meaning that if I live in a society, and the Quran explains this as well, if you live in a society and you don't speak out and say something to make the society better, you are just as guilty in the eyes of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. So what are we doing about our world? Now comes the second phase of our conversation. What is the challenge of modernity? Remember, if we study 100 years, 1,000 years ago, if we study the Renaissance, which we need to study, which we study the Enlightenment, Renaissance 500 years ago, Enlightenment 300 years ago, 200 years ago, the industrial age, and now the modern age that we live in, or some even say the post-modern age, there are certain views that you understand. What is the aquarium that we live in like? What is the sea that we live in like? What is the ocean that we live in like? How is it good and how is it bad? How is it polluted and how is it pure? We need to understand this. Because if we don't understand this, it will lead to many problems. I return to the example I gave in the beginning. What world do we live in? That's the question I asked. Then I gave you an example. You get the best education. You go to the top universities. You graduate. You become a multi-millionaire in business. Are you successful? I know in my own experiences, many examples of people who have gone to the top universities, not all, but many, they became atheists afterwards. They became millionaires, atheists. They don't believe in God. So is that success? We want to be able to create a generation of youth who are successful in the dunya and in the akhirah, in this dunya and the hereafter. Who become successful, who go to the top universities, who become a ornament for the Ahlul Bayt, who become the most successful entrepreneurs, who become the most successful engineers and doctors and lawyers and all of this. But with that, they have Iman, not at the expense of Iman. It's so important for us to understand this. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, the Quran says. O you who believe, protect yourself and your family from the hellfire. It's extremely important for us to understand this. So what happens? When we come to our modern world, we need to study our modern world. There's a name many of you may have known. He's very famous in the Iranian community as well as, for example, in the subcontinent, but his writings have gone everywhere. Dr. Ali Shariati. Dr. Ali Shariati was educated at the Sorbonne in France, in Paris. The University of Paris is also called the Sorbonne. The subject that he studied was sociology. Sociology is what? Sociology is the study of society. When I study, for example, if I'm an engineer, I'm an engineer. Many of you may be engineers. There are people who are medical professionals, doctors, engineers, researchers, and things of this nature. People who are in medicine and healthcare, they study the body. That's the system they study. People who are engineers, they may study, for example, civil engineering or electrical engineering or other types of systems, computers and cars and other devices, mechanical and other things. The people who are sociologists, they study society, they study the communities, they study the world, and they see what are the positive trends, negative trends, and neutral trends that happens in society. So one way that we can understand is if Dr. Ali Shariati was here or someone like him, what would he say is the good things about the modern world and what are the challenges of the modern world? What would he say? Or what would I say? Or what would you say? This is very important for us to understand our world. Now I come back to a name that I said a little bit earlier, Alexis de Tocqueville. Alexis de Tocqueville was a Frenchman. Please bear in mind, this is extremely important to understand the problems of our era. If you understand this, you'll understand what's going on in our world. Why mental health is rising, the issues of mental health is rising. Depression, anxiety, loss of meaning, loneliness. Loneliness in America has doubled in the last 50 years. Why? I'm giving you the answers. Drug use. Why have all of these things risen? Although we have the most affluence, the most opulence, the best hospitals, the best institutions, on one side, we're also facing big challenges. Why? I'm explaining all of that right now. Please bear with me. Alexis de Tocqueville was a Frenchman who was visiting America 200 years ago. And when he came, he was writing about what he experienced. It was called Democracy in America. He said, I saw something very strange in America, which was true then and still true now. What did de Tocqueville say? De Tocqueville said, I noticed in America that every single thing is based on money. I said, what? Now, for us, because we live in this society, it may be very difficult for you to absorb this. But if someone who's from France is looking at, by the way, France has its own problems. We can discuss that another time. For example, Islamophobia. They have a big problem with hijab of women. They have Islamophobia there. We need to help solve that. But just take this research as it is. So he said, everything in America is based on money. He said, for example, what? He said, for example, the only value of a book is based on how many copies it sells. Now, for you and I today, we may say, yeah, a book, if it sells, then it's a good book. If it doesn't sell, then it's not a good book. That is a result of intellectual colonization. Colonization is of two forms. One form of colonization is if you literally go to someone's land and steal their land. For example, Columbus. When Columbus came, according to, if you read Guns, Germs, and Steels and other books, you'll find that perhaps the greatest terrorist in history was Christopher Columbus. I don't have time to go into that, but what he did to the people, the Native Americans, I cannot describe to you on this Majalis format. Nonetheless, so this is one format and one perspective. So de Tocqueville said that these people are so absolutely engrossed with money, nothing else matters. So book value is based on how many copies it sells. So one form of colonization is colonization, the way the Indians were colonized, the way the British colonized many places, the way the French colonized other places, the way the Italians colonized. That's one form, physical colonization. The other form of colonization is intellectual colonization. And that is based on thoughts. That is based on ideas. So what happened? De Tocqueville said everything's based on money. Why is that interesting? Because if you look at the most richest people in our world today, they don't read the books that you and I read, as an example. I'll give you an example. Bill Gates has dedicated his life to energy and energy development. And he's read volumes of these books. The author of this volume of energy books, he says, I think the only person in the world who's read all of my books cover to cover is Bill Gates. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all of these people read books that generally the general population doesn't read, if people in the general population read at all. So there may be a beautiful book, but most people don't want to read it. Does that mean it's a bad book? So this is very important. So he said everyone wants to. He said number two, everyone's value in life is based on how much money they have. So for example, someone could be a doctor, an engineer, and they could be intelligent, smart, or a scientist, but they don't have as much value as someone who didn't even graduate and didn't do anything, but they have money. He said the society in America is absolutely obsessed with money, and everyone's value is based on that. And he said some other things as well. As all of these things, when you add all of these pieces of the puzzle, he said he found these challenges. Now, the second thing that I want you to know about sociology. 400 years ago, about in the 1700s, and there was a a writer by the name of Bernard Mandeville. Mandeville was a doctor, a physician, and a philosopher who lived in England. And when he lived in England, at that point in time, he wrote a book. The book was called The Fable of the Bees. It was a poem, but it was an isti'ara. Keep this word in mind. Isti'ara is the Arabic, Farsi, and Urdu word for metaphor or analogy. So he used the fable of the bees. The Quran says, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى النَّحْلِ. There's an entire chapter of the Quran called Surah Al-Nahl, the bees. And in that, the bees are talked about and discussed. And for those who are interested, the bees use advanced quantum mechanics, mathematics, in order to find their source of pollen to make honey. You know, when we destroy their habitat, without bees, we cannot survive. We need to be very cautious of the habitat and the environment. Inshallah, another time. But coming back to this, the bees, he wrote, Mandeville, you need to understand this because ideas give rise to our world. If you go to Russia, there were certain ideas that created Russia. For example, communism, Stalinism, and the likes. If you go to, for example, China, there are certain ideas that gave rise to Chinese society, communism and other things as well. America, there are certain ideas. Modernity, whether it's in Japan or America or Europe, those are based on ideas as well. But you're going to connect this to Surah Yasin and the Ahlul Bayt in a moment. So Mandeville wrote this book, The Fable of the Bees. He said, we are faced with a dilemma. We are faced with a choice. The choice is between two societies. One society is one that is religious, virtuous, ethical, good, but poor. The other society is consumerist. They buy luxury products, useless products. They're not religious, they're not ethical, nothing, but they're rich. Pause here for a moment. There's a book that's written by Niccolo Machiavelli. It was written 500 years ago. It's called The Prince. And it still governs policy today. Niccolo Machiavelli said, look, you have two options. You can either be a good religious Christian prince, or you can be effective. You can be good or you can be effective. Which one will you be? This still governs, by the way, policy in the globe. That's why countries say, if it's in our interest, we will do it. If it's not in our interest, we won't do it. Interest means what? Does it mean justice? No. If it's in our interest, even we'll carpet bomb and kill a whole nation. No problem. But it's our interest. Same thing that Machiavelli had said, that you can either be good or you can be effective. Effective does not mean good. Effective means even if you have to destroy people, you do it. Same principle. Now come back to Mandeville. Mandeville said either you can be virtuous, religious, and poor, or as a society, you can be, for example, consumerist, luxury product oriented, and rich. Which do you want? The economists understood what he was saying and they built on it. Do you know what our world picked? Our world picked the latter. Our world picked the second option, consumerism. The idea of consumerism is you build factories and you build these luxury products that other people can buy. And when they create these products, people get jobs. So it was good in theory, but it came at a big expense. We lost virtue, we lost religion, we lost ethics, we lost a lot of things along the way. Then 100 years after him came a philosopher by the name of Adam Smith. Adam Smith said, look, maybe we can have both. Maybe we can have a society where we have consumerism, which leads to jobs, but also goodness. So he said, for example, many things, but one thing he said was, he predicted that higher education would come forward. He predicted that if we create products and create jobs for people to create products that are good, then things will be good. But there were big problems in his theory, Adam Smith's theory. It was good in theory, but in practical implementation, it didn't work. So what happened in our world today, in our world, as you know, and you should know in economics, the idea of the works of Mandeville and the works of Adam Smith was that you would have a society where the middle class and the lower class create these products that are sold to the upper class, the wealthy, and it balances out the wealth of the world. This was the idea. And so what Adam Smith said was, you can either, in the past, people used to build a chair from beginning to end. That's how they operated. They built the chair from beginning to end. But as with specialization, which Adam Smith said you should do, you should divide building the chair into 100 different parts. So one person puts in one screw, that's their job, morning to night. One person puts the leg of the chair in morning to night. So what does this do? The benefit is it creates many jobs. What's the negative? The negative is that no one has any meaning in life. What is your job? Oh, I put a screw in a chair. So they lose meaning. One of the biggest challenges we're facing in the modern world is loss of meaning. Many people feel empty inside because they don't have purpose. They're like, what's my purpose in life? And what are the things that used to give answers to the issues of purpose and meaning in life? It was religion. And religion is becoming declining in the last 100, 200 years with industrialization and modernity. So going back to Mandeville and Adam Smith, what happened? Adam Smith said, we can possibly have it. But what happened? The theory was that the wealthy will buy the products created by the middle and the lower class, the luxury products that they create in the factories. But what happened? The tables are turned. The wealthiest people in the world create the most expensive luxury products that the middle class and lower class buy on interest, loans, on credit. So the Louis Vuitton, Prada, Gucci, you name the company, Ferrari, Maserati, Lamborghini, all of these companies, these things are being bought by people who are not the ultra rich necessarily, the people who are in the middle or the lower class, and they buy it on credit, those expensive products. And so what happens? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Our entire world is like this. We see someone in our community or in our society, they have income. Alhamdulillah. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. We don't know. It doesn't tell you anything. So because of this lack of meaning, what's happened? These are the issues that we're facing in the modern world. Atheism, the issue of loneliness, the issue of mental health issues on the rise, the issue of relationships, the issue of so many different dynamics of our world that are so complex. And many of our youth are trying to navigate this scenario, but they don't have guidance. But the Quran says something. They have khashya. If they have khashya in Surah Yasin, if you have khashya in their heart, there's forgiveness and mercy for you and a reward. And many of our youth have khashya in their heart, but they don't have guidance. And there have been messengers who have come and said, look, these are the challenges of the modern world. There are many good things, modern science, modern technology, modern everything. But there's other big challenges. And those big challenges are exactly what I mentioned, the loss of meaning. So many of our youth are asking, why am I here? And we don't have good answers for that. Why are our youth not coming? Because these topics are not being addressed. These issues that they are pertinent to them are not being addressed. And someone needs to discuss these topics because these are at the heart of the issues that are being faced. Now, understand, based on this theory that I've outlined from the Ahlul Bayt, how can we get the answer? We're told there's a moment in time, and I'm beginning to conclude here, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the 25 years where his right was taken, when the 25 years where his right was taken, we say he was sitting at home doing nothing. That's not true. Amir al-Mu'mineen was first writing a tafsir of the Quran, number one. Number two, he was building land and property in order to help the community. How? We're told Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes to the outskirts of Medina. When he goes to the outskirts of Medina, he begins to dig and dig. What is he digging for? He's digging for water. At that time, if you struck water, it is as if you had hit oil and you had become very wealthy. So Amir al-Mu'mineen is digging in the trenches. When he's digging and digging and digging, the first day, no luck. The second day he comes back. He begins to strike hard and hard and hard, no luck. The people are there watching Ali ibn Abi Talib on the outskirts of Medina. They said, Ali is going after this dunya. If Ali gets this oil or this water, it'll be like oil, he'll become very rich. Let's see what Ali is doing. But he's going after the dunya. Now keep that in mind. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes on the third day. When he comes on the third day, he begins to strike the ground. And he begins to strike the ground. And he strikes the ground. As he begins to strike the ground more and more, he doesn't get anything. The riwayat says Amir al-Mu'mineen then comes out of the hole and then he goes back in. And people see him sweating. And he strikes the ground this time so hard and ferociously, like the Fateh Khaybar that he was. This time he struck water. When the water came out, people said, Ali has become rich. Ali has become a multi-millionaire. Ali has become the richest person in town. Because water at that time was the biggest deal. You know, the story of Bibi Hajara, for example, the wife of Nabi Ibrahim, she said Zamzam and water came out. Do you know this? When the water came out, the people nearby, they started saying, can we stay with you? And Bibi Hajara said, yes, on some conditions. One, that this immediate area by the water is ours, you can stay nearby. And the ruling right over this will be in my family, my son Ismail's line. So this is what had happened. At that point in time, now Imam Ali hits water. Now people said, Ali is going after this dunya. What did Amir al-Mu'mineen do right away? He said, look, bring me a pen and paper. They brought Imam Ali a pen and paper. He said, look, I'm writing for you something. This entire water body, this well that I have, I've dug it, you know I've dug it. I am leaving this as waqf for you. I'm endowing this to you. Use the money that comes from here to do what? Then he says, number one, anyone who is ill, use the money from here to cure them. Anyone who's a traveler who doesn't have any money, use the money that comes from here in order to help them and assist them in their travels. Number three, Whoever is not able to get married, use the money that comes from this water to get them married. Allah. Anyone who is an orphan, use this money to look after the orphans. Amir al-Mu'mineen endowed a waqf and a trust and he gave it away. It's not true when we say Ali ibn Abi Talib was not wealthy. Ali ibn Abi Talib, especially towards he was the one who controls Kawthar in his hand. I'm talking about from the worldly perspective. From the akhirah, he controls the akhirah. But in bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what I'm saying is, Ali ibn Abi Talib, he gave us a lesson. Use wealth to make society better. And if you want proof of this, Dr. Michael Norton at Harvard University, the only way that you can use your money to be happier is by giving it away. Study conducted by Dr. Michael Norton at Harvard University. He said, look, he asked people, spend money on yourself and spend money. He asked another group, spend on others. He said the people who spend it on others, consistently their happiness went up. The people who spend it on themselves, their happiness was flat. And there's many other studies I can share with you. Another study at Harvard, one of my favorite ones. Can you pass happiness on to others? Can emotions spread like viruses? And the researchers at Harvard found that yes, emotions can spread like viruses. To what extent? To 3 degrees of separation. You know, the pandemic is spreading, COVID is spreading in our world. The same way that viruses spread, emotions can spread, happiness can spread. So if, for example, you smile at someone who you don't know, they can pass their happiness on to another person. That person passes their happiness on to another person. The third person who you've never met, you can make them happy. Why does Rasulullah say, a smile is charity? You can also imagine the opposite is true. When you frown at someone, when you get angry at someone, it has an impact on people. Learn from the Ahlul Bayt. The final principle that I will give to everyone who's listening. Anything that you want in your life, this is a principle from the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. If you want something in life, you want happiness in life, you want rizq in life, you want abundance in life, you want wealth in life, you want health in life, whatever you want in life, start by giving it away first. There's a narration, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam's time, a man came to Imam al-Sadiq and said, Yabna Rasulullah, I am in abject poverty, I am suffering, I don't have money. He said, feed a few believers, feed them food. Ya bna Rasulillah, O grandson of Rasulullah, I don't have the money to eat myself. How am I supposed to feed people? He says, go back home, and even if you have to sell the pillow that you sleep on, sell it. Get some money and feed them simple food. Allahu Akbar. He did exactly that. The rivers of income increased for him. The principle we get from this is whatever you want in your life, happiness, smile to others. Wealth, give to others. Whatever you want in life, start by giving it away. This is the cure to the problems that we're facing of atheism, the problems of lack of meaning in life, the issues of loneliness, the issues of relationships that many are facing. If you want to make friends, do you know how difficult it is? There was a study I was reading. In America, after the age of 30, it is almost impossible to make new friends. This is the world we live in. So how do you do it? You first start by becoming a friend to others. Then you will notice friendship come into your own life. So look and see how the Ahlul Bayt operated and connect that to the Quran that says we send messenger after messenger. Even these people, they're not prophets, they're not imams, they're not this, but our scholars even give us guidance. Do we learn from their guidance? What did de Tocqueville say? What did Mandeville say? What did Adam Smith say? These were people who are in our modern world giving us insight about the challenges that we're facing. How do we use the teaching of the Ahlul Bayt to solve these problems? That's the $1 million question, or the $1 billion question that we are facing as a community and a society. I'm out of time, inshallah. Life permitting, inshallah, we can discuss this another time. The community members of Milwaukee are all in my heart, inshallah. One day we can discuss this further in person to solve the problems of our community. But at this time, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this holy gathering. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to illuminate our hearts. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase our rizq and our sustenance. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow our next generations to be better believers than us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring our youth back to the communities and allow them to thrive. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow our next generations and our current generations to have the best of this dunya and akhirah, to be the best educated, the best in terms of the halal rizq, and the best in terms of their iman and their belief in the Ahlul Bayt and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to allow us to be a zina for the Ahlul Bayt, that they would be proud to look at us as followers of theirs. We have a tradition from Imam Rada alayhi salam that if you come to a town, and you're a new town, and you ask who are the believers there, and the name does not come back of a Shia, it is safe to assume there's no Shia in the town. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be the best of people, of human beings, to our neighbors, to our friends, to our family in this dunya. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless all of those who have allowed these programs to happen in Milwaukee, those who have helped in terms of contributions, those who have helped with IT, the media, those who are helping before, during, and after the program. May Allah bless all of those who are participating and their families. And Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman and allow us to be amongst his companions when he returns. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal faraj. Ahsan, tayyib Allah, Maulana, jazakumullah khaira. I'm sorry for some noise, and I have to go to invite some members to coming to the community.
No problem, not a problem, no problem. May Allah bless you. May Allah bless you.
I know
keep
that
in your du'as.
You are very busy today, and mashallah, as a you was busy, mashallah, you handled the program. Jazakumullah khairan.
May Allah bless you. Iltimas dua. May Allah bless your entire team. Fi amana. Khuda hafiz. Fi amana.
Assalamu alaikum again, brother Abu Abdullah. Brother, we cannot hear you. Brother Abu Abdullah.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah, brother. Yes. We are going to close the program, brother, by reciting Dua Faraj. And inshallah, Amman Yajib for all of the people, they are sick and ask us Iltimas Dua. And inshallah, reciting Fatiha for the marhum. Bismillah, brother.
Ya Allah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
اللهم صل على
محمد
وعجل. Brother and sister, please recite 5 times Amman Yajib for all of the people, they are sick, especially for our community member, brother Sajuddin, brother Hussein Musavi, they are in the hospital and they are in the coma. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amman yujibul mustarra idha du'ahu wa yakshifu as-su. Amman yujibul mustarra idha du'ahu wa yakshifu as-su. Amman yujibul mustarra idha du'ahu wa yakshifu as-su. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات ومن مات على الهدى والإيمان، بالخصوص إلى أرواح أموات جماعتنا الحاضرين السامعين، نهدي للجميع ثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على
محمد
وآل محمد. بسم الله
الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
الحمد لله
رب العالمين.
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Thank you so much for Brother Abu Abdullah for reciting Dua Iftitah and Quran. And thank you so much for all of the members to join us to this program. Jazakumullah khaira. Taqabbalallah a'malakum. Inshallah, we have another program with Maulana Sayyid Ja'far Rizvi for last night of Ramadan. Inshallah, probably should be Wednesday, inshallah. And Thursday, inshallah, we have Namaz Eid al-Fitr in person in our community. See you, inshallah, Wednesday night as a virtual program for lecture of Maulana Sayyid Ja'far Rizvi. Taqabbalallah a'malakum fi amanullah. Khuda hafiz.